Want to know why you feel guilty? Because it was good for your ancestors, and maybe even good for some of your current family members or friends. Let's talk about where guilt comes from by first discriminating between guilt and shame. So, guilt is feeling bad about doing something. Shame is feeling bad about myself as a person. So, let's say that I cut somebody off in my car. I could feel guilt about that action, right? And I could feel shame as a human for being the sort of person that would cut people off. Very, very different. Shame often leads to or comes from lower self-esteem. Guilt can actually be quite adaptive. So some people experience maybe more guilt than they should, and others maybe need a little bit more guilt in their lives. So we'll talk about the function of guilt, and then we'll also talk about what to do if you have too much of it. My name's Lyda, and I'm a licensed psychologist. I do exclusively online therapy. So if this video is helpful, please feel free to follow me on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter. And you can also get in touch with me if you want to pursue therapy. So let's talk a little bit about guilt. Guilt is an evolutionarily adaptive trait. So let's say we're living in our tribe long time ago, and perhaps we eat a bigger piece of the meat that was killed that day than we should have. And so if other people notice that we did that, we could be punished by our tribe. We could be excluded by the tribe. And back then, there was no grocery store around the corner. So if you did something to piss off your tribe and you got excluded, they could withhold food from you and you had no way to get it. So you needed to stay in the good graces of your tribe in order for that community to continue to exist and for you to continue to exist, because you are reliant on the community of your tribe. So guilt was a cue that evolved with the outcome being that we were alerted when we had stepped over the line with someone else, and it initiated in us a repairing interaction. So you know, when you feel guilt, you often feel drawn to be near the person that you injured. If you watch it in chimpanzees, they'll groom each other to try to make amends. We're trying to repair that relationship so that we don't get kicked out of the tribe, because getting kicked out of the tribe is real bad for your health. The tribe is what keeps you safe. So guilt evolved because people who felt it and made reparations with people that they offended survived, and people who didn't feel it didn't make reparations and didn't survive. So if you feel especially guilty, it might be that your ancestors survived because of it. But you also might notice that guilt is costing you in your life. So anything that we have the capacity to feel, we could feel too much of or too little of. And a lot of times people feel guilt unnecessarily, or they feel more guilt than the situation actually calls for. So there's some things that you can do with that. If you notice that your guilt has been activated, pause before you take action. So sometimes guilt sends us spinning into a spiral of, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to do that. And we kind of like supplicate, lay on our backs and apologize and try to make things better. But if you have a particularly high sensitivity to guilt, that could lead you to relationships where you're constantly and chronically apologizing for things that you didn't do wrong. And that might not be so terrible, except that it tends to make you a magnet for people who accept that in you, who also feel like you're doing things wrong all the time. And those aren't really the people that we want in our life. So we want to be able to calibrate your guilt response to be accurate to the situation. So when you feel that upsurge of guilt, you will also feel the impulse to make amends. If you feel shame, often the impulse is to withdraw and kind of hide. Guilt, usually the impulse is to try to engage and make amends. So you'll feel the guilt, and then you'll feel the impulse to alleviate the guilt by taking some sort of repairing action. Pause before you take that action. So the body gives you a signal, guilt. And now, just like if your smoke detector went off in your house, You hear the beeping, you don't immediately like grab the dogs, the laptop, the kids, and the husband and go running out the door. Usually you pause and you sniff. Is there smoke, or did I forget to change the battery again? Or somebody burning the Brussels sprouts. So take that same pause and check in. Did I really do something that requires apology or requires an action? And if so, cool, take that action. And if not, then you can just very gently thank your physiology for the cue. Yeah, you know, thank you. I know the Brussels sprouts were burning, but it's not a fire, and we're all okay. Thanks for trying to protect us. Thank that part of you that felt the guilt for trying to protect you and your relationships, and then you can let it go. Now, the wrong thing to do here is to smush it down. So, for example, if you know that you have a particularly strong guilt response, you might feel like, oh, geez, I'm feeling guilty again. Let me just smash that down. But that doesn't work. The body will keep signaling to you that something is wrong until you pause and assess and really kind of, this is going to sound cheesy, but honor that your body is giving you a cue. And then do something about it, with the doing something being like, okay, I've assessed, and now I'm going to take this action, or I've assessed and now I'm going to do something to calm myself down and reassure myself that everything is okay. If you reassure without the good evidence to reassure, the body doesn't believe that. You have to actually have checked it out. If you're someone who, once you check it out and you think, I don't need to do anything like this, but you continue to feel the sensation, and you will then feel compelled to do something about it, then it's going to be helpful for you to talk to a psychologist or other mental health professional to help you figure out how to ride through that sensation without taking action to eliminate it. Because unfortunately, just like anxiety, when you take action to eliminate the guilt, you are teaching your body that the guilt is intolerable and that you have to do something about it. And so it only makes the guilt response more and more sensitized. If instead you listen, do the assessment, and you can move on, great. Some of us have a particularly high guilt response, and that might just be an inherited genetic thing. It might be that it was reinforced for you growing up, or it was adaptive for you in your family to feel a particularly high level of guilt. Maybe you had to feel that to kind of manage your parents' reaction. If that's the case, it can be very helpful to do therapy to help undo some of that early ground laying, because bringing that trait into future relationships unfortunately can put you into a similar dynamic that you grew up with that wasn't particularly healthy for you. We recreate those dynamics in our future relationships, and I'll make another video about how we do that in the future. So guilt, an evolutionary response that's meant to protect you and has served you very well, or you wouldn't be here today. Your ancestors wouldn't have survived. But also something that can be particularly sensitized and go off when it doesn't need to. I find it really helpful to identify what my buttons are. Guilt may be your button. And so if it is, and you feel guilt, it's often helpful to kind of say to yourself, okay, self, I'm feeling the sensation. It feels very strong. It feels very real. But I know I'm susceptible to guilt. Like, this is one of my 3 to 5 push button issues. And so I know that I can't trust this sensation. So I need to give it some time before I act on it. Or I need to reality test with a friend who knows what the heck they're talking about. Or with your therapist before you take action on it. I know what my 3 to 5 buttons are. If I feel one of those feelings get activated, I'm very careful to let myself know, like, all right, honey, one of those buttons just got activated, and like now is not the time to take any action. So let's just ride through this sensation, and your therapist can help you learn some skills to ride through that sensation, not to smush it, not to distract too much from it or to avoid it, but to ride it through. And then on the other side of it is the time to make a decision about what to do. And I often practice gratitude with those sensations, because as obnoxious as they can be, and as much as you might not want to feel them, they're why you're here today. And they're only trying to help you out. Just like the smoke alarm that sometimes goes off when it shouldn't and drives you crazy because you can't find a chair tall enough to get to it. Same kind of thing, but that smoke alarm can save your life and has certainly led to you having one. I hope that helps. I hope that helps you to be a little bit more gentle with yourself when those feelings come up, and to know about how to handle them when they do come up. All right, have a great day.